Good evening, everybody. Good to see you all here tonight. We're glad to be here for our Sunday night time of worship. We have visitors, and we thank you for choosing to be here. We have friends from other places that are here visiting with us. It's very good to have them here. We come together, and y'all can tell what I'm fixing to say. You can look at me and tell, or you can talk to me just a few minutes, and you'll realize there's a lot of things that I've never thought of. There's a lot of things that a lot of us have never thought of. When I first heard this lesson that I wanted to do tonight, it hit me. I've never thought of that. I've never thought of it in that way. But I want to look tonight at a few characters, and I want to look at them not in the character of their lives and what they did that might have been good, but I want to look at them in a way, sort of the dark spots for the most part. Maybe one or two of them will be light spots, but a dark spot. And it all occurred at exactly the same time. We're going to be in the Gospel of Luke. We're going to be in chapter. And this is a time when Jesus is in the last day, basically, last hours of his life here on earth. And when we consider the events that lead up to the death of Jesus, it horrifies us. It just tears us all to pieces about the treachery and the cowardice that we see from all the people that are around Jesus. And we fall in, if you're like me, we fall in and we are ready to condemn them. We are ready, and rightly so. I'm not saying that, but I want us to think about something also. If these things had not taken place as they took place, if these people that we're going to talk about had not acted in the way that they acted, we'd be lost tonight. I had never thought of it in that way. I just wanted to get mad. I just wanted to be aggravated and get mad at these people. I'm ready to cut them off. I'm ready to take pot shots at them. I'm ready to do anything that I want to do or anything that I can do against them. As we look at what took place on that weekend, and the more honest that I am with myself, I get a little more disturbed all the time. Not because of their actions, but because how I can, if I really am honest, how I can see myself in their actions. First one we're going to look at comes from Luke chapter 22, the first 6 verses. Now the feast of unleavened bread drew near, which is called Passover. And the chief priests and the scribes sought how they might kill him, for they feared the people. Then Satan entered Judas, surnamed Iscariot, who was numbered among the 12. So he went his way and conferred with the chief priests and the captains how he might betray him to them. And they were glad and agreed to give him money. So he promised and sought opportunity to betray him to them in the absence of the multitude. We find out in Matthew that Judas got 30 pieces of silver. If we go all the way back when Moses is giving the law and the statutes to live by, we find out that a man can sell someone in his family into servitude for 30 pieces of silver. So Jesus was sold at a slave's price. He was sold into slavery. He was sold, if you really want to get right down to it, into the slavery of sin. Not his own. Not his own. He had no sin. But he's still sold into the slavery of sin. Mine. Yours. So the first thing that we do is we look at Judas and we know that he regretted what he did, threw the money down, and went and hanged himself. We know that he was sorry for what he had done. We know that he realized what he had done in the betraying of innocent blood. But do you realize when you commit something, you can't go back and change it? You can move on from it. You can get forgiveness for it. But words that are said, you can't swallow them back. People will remember. The actions that are committed, you can't go back to yesterday and act different, go down a different path. So we need to always be careful what path we're going down to hold down on the regret that we have. We can go by the narrow path and do well, or we can go by the wide path and wish we could have done different. Judas went by the wide path. He wanted that money. He liked that money. Do you like money? You ever wish you had enough that you wouldn't have to work? I have thought about it. I wish that I had enough that I could come out here on Tuesdays and help in the benevolent building. That on Mondays when they are doing the Meals on Wheels, that I could be here on Monday and that I could help do that. Christmas time when they have those kids that come here, I would love to be here for that. I've been once. I've been to it once. Hearing about some of the mishaps that go on for visiting that has went on through the years, I would love to be able to do that. And when I say mishaps, visiting is a really good thing. But if you've been here as long as I have and you know the men that I've known, Gene Carter, if Gene Carter ever carried you on a shortcut, you could look for an all-night trip. And y'all know what I'm talking about, the ones of you that remember him. I still hear things. Jack made a trip the other day to see somebody in Cookville, went all the way up there, but he went too early. He couldn't get in to see them because he got there in the morning and he should have been there in the evening. Y'all know Jack, he has to get out early. Real early. So he got there too early and he didn't get to go in and see this person. It's just little things. Little things. And then people will tell you stories about what went on. Things that you can look back on that you really would like to be involved in. Judas had been involved with Jesus throughout. He was one of the ones that was handpicked by Jesus. And now here he has sold him at a slave's price. I told you the story in here once about a preacher moving to a new town, and as he moved to that new town, he got on the bus and going to take the bus, and his fare was going to be $1.50, so he handed the bus driver $2. The bus driver handed him back change. Well, when he went to sit down in his seat, the bus driver had given him 3/4 back. And it just registered with him. He'd give me a quarter too much. Now, do I need to give that back? It's just a quarter. I don't need to worry too much about a quarter. But as he started to get off the bus, he handed the quarter back and told the bus driver, said, "Here's your quarter. You gave me too much change." Said the bus driver smiled at him. Said, "You're the new preacher in town, ain't you?" He said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Well, I've been thinking about going to church, but I just wanted to see what you'd do if I gave you too much money." And the preacher got off the bus and he said, "The first thing that I did was grab the post that the bus stop sign was on and bowed my head and said, 'Dear God, please forgive me. I almost sold your son for a quarter.'" Judas sold him 30 pieces of silver. Have I ever betrayed Jesus? I can put myself in the shoes of Judas. One's just as bad as the other. I may not have sold him. I may not have been the one there at that time that took the 30 pieces of silver and had to throw it back down. But have I ever betrayed Jesus? Have I ever done something that was wrong and had to ask forgiveness for it? So we're not as far off from Judas as we thought, are we? Well, it's a different thing. Judas was completely, they were friends. Yeah, he's my friend too. But have I ever betrayed him? Have I ever out? Have I ever plotted against him? Knowing what I am to do and knowing what he has told me to do, have I ever plotted against him and been just like those that said, when the clouds part and I know he's coming, I'm going to ask for forgiveness? Have we ever done something knowing that it was wrong? Have we ever plotted against it? Done something knowing that it was wrong, knowing we shouldn't do it. You see, what disturbs me most now about Judas is how really close he and I are, except by the grace of God. Next thing I want to talk about, we're going to go to Luke chapter 22. We're going to go verses 54 through 62. Having arrested him, they led him and brought him into the high priest's house, but Peter followed at a distance. Now, when they had kindled a fire in the midst of the courtyard and sat down together, Peter sat down among them, and a certain servant girl, seeing him as he sat by the fire, looked intently at him and said, "This man was also with him." But he denied him, saying, "Woman, I do not know him." And after a little while, another saw him and said, "You also are one of them." Peter said, "Man, I am not." Then after about an hour had passed, another confidently affirmed, saying, "Surely this fellow was with him, for he's a Galilean." But Peter said, "Man, I do not know what you are saying." Immediately, while he was still speaking, the rooster crowed. Listen. And the Lord turned and looked at Peter. Then Peter remembered the word of the Lord, how he had said to him, "Before the rooster crowed, you'll deny me 3 times." So Peter went out and wept bitterly. Most of the time, if I told you that I was like Peter, that would be a compliment. But you see, I'm not like Peter in the complimentary sense. Peter was straightforward to the point of hurting feelings if he had to. If he thought it necessary, he was straightforward. He didn't back up most of the time. Everybody wants to say, yeah, when he crawled over the side of that boat, he wished he hadn't. Thing of it is, you think about it just a little bit. When Peter went over the side of that boat, guess what he did that I've never done and that I won't do and that you won't do? He walked on the water. He was walking on it until he got to paying attention to it and started to sink. And then he was the only one of them that had the master's hand come down and raise him back up. But here we have one who a few hours before was willing to die for the cause of Jesus Christ. When he swung that sword at the servant of the high priest and cut his ear off, he wasn't a swordsman. He wasn't trying to cut his ear off. He was trying to split his head, and he missed. But Jesus said, wait, and he healed the man. Healed the man. Peter witnessed all these things, and then he followed at a distance, and Jesus had told him, "Peter, you're going to deny me 3 times. He said, "No, I'm not going to deny you. I'll die with you, but I won't deny you." Here he denies him 3 times. He denies him 3 times. And on the 3rd time, the rooster crowed. Before he could get done speaking, the rooster crowed, and the Lord looked at him. Can you imagine the feeling that Peter had when their eyes connected? Can you just see him, Will? How many times have I denied Jesus, maybe not with words, but by my actions? How many times have I denied him by the way that I act? How many times have I tried to blend in with the world because it's easier than standing against it? How many times have I said, "Well, I'm not going to say anything about this because it might make somebody think hard of me, or it might turn somebody from the error of their way too." You ever thought of that? It might. I had a man tell me one time, said, "Don't say might." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because that's what grows on a chicken." He said, "You say, find you a different word, find you a different adjective. Don't say might. You might help somebody. Somebody might get mad at you. But years from now, they might see that their anger at you is unfounded, and it might help them." How many times have I tried to avoid suffering and sacrifice By turning away from Jesus, or by saying I don't know Him, or by acting like I don't know Him. How many times? Let's go over to Luke chapter 23. And as we get there, let's go verse 13 through 25. I never did like this one at all, but I'm a whole lot like it. Then Pilate, when he had called together the chief priests, the rulers, and the people, said to them, You have brought this man to me as one who misleads the people, and indeed, having examined him in your presence, I have found no fault in this man concerning those things which you accuse him. No, neither did Herod, for I sent you back to him, and indeed nothing deserving of death has been done to him. I will therefore chastise him and release him, for it was necessary for him to release one to them at the feast. And they all cried out at once, saying, Away with this man, and release to us Barabbas, who had been thrown into prison for a certain rebellion made in the city and for murder. Pilate, therefore, wishing to release Jesus, again called out to them, but they shouted, saying, Crucify him, crucify him. Then he said to them the third time, Why, what evil has he done? I have found no reason for death in him. I will therefore chastise him and let him go. But they were insistent, demanding with loud voices that he be crucified, and the voices of these men and their chief priests prevailed. So Pilate gave sentence that it should be as they requested. How many times have I compromised to find a middle ground with society? How many times have I compromised my beliefs, my things that I knew was right? Pilate knew. He knew that there was nothing wrong with Jesus. Yet he was still going to beat him and turn him loose. But he was going to turn him loose. Let me chastise him. Let me whip him and turn him loose. What are you going to whip him for? If he ain't done nothing wrong, what are you whipping him for? He's trying to appease the Jews. He's trying to find a solution so that he can turn this man loose because he's done nothing wrong. He says, maybe if they see him get a beating, that'll appease their bloodthirstiness and everything will go along and I'll be able to let him go because he's done nothing wrong. How many times have I compromised my beliefs so that I can find a middle ground with society, so that I can be more acceptable to society? I want you to take a real close look at a lot of society today, folks. A lot of our society today is what our mamas and daddies told us to stay away from when we were growing up. A lot of society today is evil. Pure and simple and evil. Don't take the truth. Don't use the truth. Use this instead. This is the way I want you to see it. So you see it this way. Don't look at it for what it really is. How many times have I compromised to find a middle ground so that I can fit in better with society? How many times have I looked at something that is not just and not really had any feelings about it whatsoever, was indifferent toward it, knowing that it's wrong? I know several years ago the movie Roots came on TV, and it angered me even at that time. I wasn't old enough to drive, but it made me so mad at the way one human being could treat another human being. And it was posted on Facebook the other day. I think Austin posted it. It said Scooby-Doo taught us that the real monsters were always human. One thing on this earth cannot be as mean to a human being as another human being. Nothing. Nothing. If there was a bear walking around in the front yard out there and you went out there and went to poking him, what would you expect from him? He's going to tear you apart. You know that's going to happen. You know it. That's what a bear would do. But a human may hide from you for a while and do something to you later. How many Have I looked at something that's not just and not had any feeling about it whatsoever? You see, Pilate looked at Jesus and he knew it was an injustice, but he didn't care. He didn't care. Made him a little more popular with the people because he done what they wanted him to do. Now let's look back at Luke chapter 23, verses 6 through 12. When Pilate heard of Galilee, he asked if the man were a Galilean. And as soon as he knew that he belonged to Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem at that time. Now when Herod saw Jesus, he was exceedingly glad, for he had desired for a long time to see him, because he had heard many things about him, and he hoped to see some miracle done by him. Then he questioned him with many words, but he answered him nothing. And the chief priests and scribes stood and vehemently accused him. Then Herod, with his men of war, treated him with contempt and mocked him, arrayed him in a gorgeous robe, and sent him back to Pilate. That very day, Pilate and Herod became friends with each other, for previously they had been with enmity at each other. They hadn't liked one another. They hadn't got along. But because of the respect each one showed to the other at this time with Jesus, they became friends. But when we look at Herod, how many times would you have liked to have been a witness to Jesus' healing of the man that was lame? Would you like to have been witness to Jesus giving someone sight? When Jesus spit on the ground and made clay eyes and told him, said, go wash in the pool of Siloam. Would you like to have been witness to that, see that man come up and say, I can see? Herod was glad to see Jesus. What it says. He was very glad that they were bringing Jesus to him because he had been wanting to meet him. The reason he had been wanting to meet him was because he wanted to see him do some of these magic tricks. He wanted to see him do something and do a miracle in front of him. Have I ever treated Jesus like a magician and wanted him to just do some kind of trick for me? And that's what a lot of people thought it was trickery. It wasn't. He was really doing miracles. He really did do that. The things we read about in the Bible really did happen. He really could heal. He really could raise the dead. Would you like to have been there and witnessed when Lazarus come hobbling out of that tomb? And Jesus said, loose him and set him free. And when they loosed him, he had already started to stink. When they loosed him, he was okay. Everything was good. And Jesus wept because he brought him back from a better place to live a while longer here. And he wept because of the unbelief that had went on. Have I ever made shallow and selfish petitions that I didn't get an answer for? A few years ago, there was a song that really made an impact on a lot of people. And if you listen to the words, it's a really good song. For the most part, the thoughts are good behind it. Not necessarily, I don't necessarily care for the man that did the singing of it. I thank God for unanswered prayers. You do realize that if you pray for something and it doesn't happen, that you've got your answer, don't you? Either you didn't need it, it wasn't something that was good, or it was a desire that was going to hurt you. How many of you pray for the ability to be able to be here when the doors are open? I do. Are you here? Is it a blessing? You better believe it. There's a lot of people that can't be. There's a lot of people that aren't. There's a lot of people that won't allow themselves to be. But have I ever made selfish petition that didn't receive an answer? I had a man tell me one time, said, if you pray for $1 million to be on your front porch in the morning. Guess what? You ain't going to have $1 million on your front porch in the morning because what does it matter? What does it matter? If you pray for someone who is suffering to not suffer any longer, is that hard? You better believe it. You better believe that it's hard. But if God answers that prayer, they no longer suffer. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Suffering on this side of lifetime, when the Lord allows their suffering to end, they are in so much of a better place. No more pain, no more hurt, no more smothering, no more hurting, no more sickness, no more not being able to move around, no more not being able to walk. I have worked in a nursing home for the last 5 years. And one thing that I used to be scared to go in the nursing home because I was scared of them people. They was in a nursing home. And they're old. Now I have a whole lot of respect for them. Did you realize that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, they see the same block walls every day? They can't go to go to the store and get them a cold drink and pack peanuts. They're right there. And 90% of them want to be somewhere else. 10% of them don't know where they are. And that's sad. I'm not scared of them anymore. I have respect for them now. I done told Austin. You can ask him. I done told Austin. I said, if you put me in the nursing home and they call you and tell you your daddy has left the nursing home, just tell him, come right here. He's on his way to me right now. And I will be. And I'm going to whip him when I get there, if at all possible. Have I ever made shallow petitions and received no answers? Luke chapter 23, verses 18 through 25, we read about just a minute ago. This man called Barabbas, he had no choice in this matter. He didn't ask for this. He didn't want this. But we don't read anywhere that he ever realized the indebtedness that he had to Jesus Christ, that he should have had to Jesus Christ, because he was going to be crucified. The reason that I have been told due to history that they asked for Barabbas was because he had stirred up a rebellion, probably against the Roman government, trying to overthrow them a little bit, and people had died, at least one. Therefore, he's charged with murder, and he's going to die for it. But one had to be released. That was the custom. So they said, crucify Jesus and release to us Barabbas. He may have been a hero to some. You know, like Jesse James was a hero to some. Even though he was a thief and a killer, murderer, he was still a hero to some. Barabbas may have been the same thing. But have I ever failed to realize how indebted that I am to Jesus? Have I ever failed to show my gratitude for Him? For the beating that He took and for the crucifixion that He suffered in order to save my worthless soul. The Son of God, the God, the real one, the only one, the Son of God died for me. For me. I ever failed to show my gratitude for that. I can see myself in Barabbas. Am I in the crowd? Luke 23:13 through and verse 25. That crowd that stood there and Jesus standing alone and everybody shouting, crucify him, crucify him. Release to us Barabbas. Crucify him. Get rid of this man. Away with him. Pilate said he's done nothing wrong. We don't care. Away with him. Get rid of him. We don't want to hear him anymore. We don't want him around anymore. Have I ever stood with the crowd rather than stand alone with Jesus? We all done it. It's a whole lot easier to be with the crowd than it is to stand away from it. But the Bible tells us that we are a peculiar people. That's what it means. We're set apart. We're set apart from the rest of the world. We are a peculiar people. Luke chapter 23, verses 39 through 41. This lesson's going to be yours. We're talking about that thief that was non-repentant. That thief that railed on Jesus. Have I ever wanted to be rescued from the consequences of my sin and not have to do anything? Not have any responsibility for my own? Sure I have. Have I ever been bitter towards somebody else and said they were responsible when it was me? Maybe it was somebody that told on me or somebody that got me caught. I'm the one that committed it wrong. They just told the truth about it. Have I ever held anything against them? Possibly. Possibly. We sing a song. Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Yep, I was. I was there. I'm the villain in the story. I killed Jesus. It was me because of my sin. I can see myself in Judas. I can see myself in Peter denying Christ. I can see myself in Pontius Pilate, in Herod, in Barabbas, in the crowd. Yes, I was there. Maybe not in body, but it was because of my sin. But thank God there's another character in this story in the same reading. That penitent thief. The one who changed. The one who's still guilty of being a thief. The one who had still railed on Jesus along with the other one before. But he changed his mind. And he changed his life. And he changed his destination. Lord, remember me. Jesus said, today you'll dwell with me in paradise. Thanks be to God that there is that one, because we've got all these others that we're looking at that I see myself in. But then we have that one, and I can see myself there too. Penitent. Asking God for forgiveness. I'm him too. Like him, I can recognize my sinfulness, and I can realize that only asking for repentance in sorrow and asking for the merciful grace from God. I can see that. And because God is who He is, He offers us the terms of His pardon. We're told to hear the gospel. We're told to believe what we have heard. We're told to confess the name of Jesus Christ, to repent of our sins, to be baptized for the remission of our sins, and to remain faithful unto death in order to receive the crown of life. Maybe tonight you are here and you've not done those things. Maybe in talking about these people that we've just talked about, you can see yourself in them and see that you need to be that repentant thief, the one who needs to come to Jesus Christ, the one who needs to come back to God, the one who needs to come home. We're here to help you with that in any way that we can. Maybe you're here tonight and you are one who is a Christian that has sin in their life and you need the prayers of the church. Tonight, if you are subject to the invitation's call, won't you please come while together we stand while we sing.